Today we're going to be continue with multiplying polynomials. More specifically though, we're going to focus in today on multiplying what we call binomials. Now yesterday you pretty much had a monomial times a polynomial, and all you had to do was distribute. Okay, this is going to be a little different today. Today we have a binomial times a binomial. So our first example is the quantity x plus 5 times the quantity x plus 3. Now I'd make a picture or an illustration of this problem to start with. When we worked with fractions, we did grid and what I call multiplication grids. Like I'd have a half this way, so I divide that in half and have this part shaded. And then I'd go this way times 3/4, so I divide it into fourths this way, and I'd have 3 of them shaded. Let's do a different color. And where do they overlap? We had 3 out of 8, or 3/8. That was your answer. Okay, we're going to do that same process here when we're talking about multiplying a quantity times another quantity when you have more than one term. Okay? So I do want you to make this illustration. This is something that you could very easily see on the map. We had the one word problem earlier where you were finding the area of a square. Do you remember that? And it had it divided into like a little square and then a bigger square and a couple of rectangles. And you were to just express the area. This is kind of the same thing. Here I'm representing x. And because I have an x here, an x is represented by what I call a full length. Because it's an x squared, it represents the box. Now, why is it x squared? Because I'm going to be taking an x times an x. So to represent this, I have x plus 5. The 5 is represented by rods, your whole numbers. And here you have 3 rods as well. Okay, so that's why I'm setting up my grid as x plus 5, x plus 3. Now, this part is just filled in because of what you have here. We have to complete this rectangle. So I fill these in with little bitty squares. So I just finished filling it in. Now, how much do I put in until it's a complete rectangle? Sorry, mine aren't perfect, but you're getting the idea, I hope. Okay, and what do we have here? Well, we are left with one x squared term. This is an x squared. Okay, so I'm left with x squared. And I'm left with how many x's? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, plus 8 x's. And then here's your little individual ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, plus 15. You're like, wow, I don't want to have to do that for every problem. Well, we're not going to learn it that way. We're going to do a shortcut. And it's called FOIL. In order to multiply a binomial by a binomial, we are going to distribute, but you do it in an orderly fashion. We take the first term times the first term. We take the outer terms and multiply them together. Then we take the two inner terms and the two last terms. And you see it looks kind of like a crescent moon, doesn't it? If you do those correctly. Now, do you have to do them in that order? No. But you do need to make sure that you distributed this x with both terms over here, and then I distributed the 5 with both terms in the second factor. So let's do that. Let's do the first two. I'm going to take x times x and get x squared. X times 3 is, and it's a positive 3x. Okay, now let's go to the second term, 5. 5 times x is plus 5x because it's positive, and I multiply the last and get 15. Now, can I combine anything? Yes, and I get x squared plus 8x plus 15. Same thing. So most of you will find that this, once you learn FOIL, that's going to be your only method. You're never going to go back to this picture. But what you might find, especially on some test or something, they'll give you this picture and ask you to explain it. All this is x plus 5 times x plus 3. And how do you get your solution? This is an x squared plus 8x's plus 15. That's all that it is. All right, let's have you try this one. Let's multiply. This is a binomial times a binomial. So when you recognize that it's a binomial times a binomial, you know that you're going to use what? FOIL. Okay, go ahead and try this. When you think you have a solution, you have it multiplied and simplified, raise your hand, I'll check you, and then you can check your partner, please. Okay, great. Using FOIL, I do the first. X times x is x squared. X times 1 is 1x, or just an x. Negative 4 times x minus 4x, or negative 4x, and negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. I can combine the two x terms, and I'm left with x squared minus 3x minus 4. And that's my lowest that I can go. I've simplified it. Any questions? Okay, now let's try one where you don't have just a plain x. Again, we recognize that it's a binomial times a binomial, so I'm going to use FOIL in order to multiply. Give this one a try. All right, great. Take your first terms, multiply them together, and I get 10x squared. Outer minus 30x. Inner plus 8x. And last, minus 24. Is there anything I can combine? The x terms, and I get 10x squared minus 22x minus 24. Good. Any questions on using FOIL? Some special products that I want you to be aware of. The first one, if I have a number plus another number times a quantity in which are using the same numbers but finding the difference between the two numbers, when you do your FOIL, you're going to actually come up with a squared minus b squared. And I'll show you how. The first terms, a squared. Outer, negative ab. Inner, plus ab. Last, minus b squared. Do you see those two cancel out? And that's what you always get. Now, do I expect you to memorize that? Probably not. Just always be able to do your FOIL. The last two are where sometimes you want to try to take a shortcut, and there really isn't one. When you have an a plus b, or quantity squared, then go ahead and write it out. A plus b times the quantity a plus b. And then do your FOIL. First terms, a squared. Outer terms, plus ab. Inner terms, plus ab. And last terms, plus b squared. Combining your two ab's, because they are like terms, I will get a final result of a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. And then you're going to do something similar if you have the difference. If there's a difference of two quantities, set it up the same, and then do your FOIL. A squared minus ab minus ab plus b squared. And I have then a squared, combined your like terms, minus 2ab's plus b squared. Now those are just some of the special products, but please make sure you don't try to use any shortcuts for the latter two. Are there any questions on multiplying binomials by binomials? And what do we use when we multiply a binomial times binomial? FOIL. First, outer, inner, and last.